It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of January 16th, 2004. We got 4 movies to look at today, and some very interesting movies, ranging from really odd to really stupid to oddly, stupidly beautiful, to a film that is probably one of those underrated films that you probably definitely should check out. We have a couple of those actually here. But let's go ahead and take a look at the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Along Came Polly. And I think the trailer here kind of sums up the weirdness of this whole movie. Yeah, on paper, Along Came Polly doesn't seem like a weird movie, but when you actually watch the film itself, you can start to pick out how odd and bizarre this movie really is, because this is a film that is a trip. It's a trip, alright, but in the film, you see Ben Stiller playing Reuben Pfeiffer, who's a tightly wound New Yorker who finds his life falling apart when he discovers that his wife is cheating on him with a scuba diver on their honeymoon. He then rebounds and finds himself falling in love with his former classmate, played by Jennifer Aniston, as she tries to loosen up his rigid ways, which brings him to question his life and sane decisions, and that you can't analyze the safe choice in love all the time. And the whole movie just feels really weird because it feels so bizarrely out of place for everybody involved. Like Ben Stiller and Jennifer Aniston, you can buy them as a couple. I mean, you could definitely believe them in a romantic comedy, but it's everything else that just seems really weird. Probably the biggest example of the weirdness in this is Philip Seymour Hoffman, who plays Ben Stiller's friend in this, Sandy. And it's hard not to look at this character in the movie and think to yourself, why this is so weird, because this is a role that was clearly meant for Jack Black. And Jack Black was slowly but surely building his career at the time with the success of School of Rock coming out, and, you know, it became a big hit for him and turned him into a superstar. And it wouldn't surprise me if Black had looked at this role and played the role right after, as his career was taking off, and he passed off it. But don't worry, Ben Stiller and Jack Black would later reunite for Envy, which is a much better film, even weirder than this film. Some might say just as weird as this film, but that film has Envy has definitely held up much better than I think Along Came Polly has. But the comedy here is also really lazy too, and it's just the crux of the comedy is gross out humor. Not even good gross out humor, like lazy gross out humor. Like you see it in the trailer there. You know, the part where Stiller gets Seymour Hoffman's sweaty self all over him during the basketball game. The poop jokes are terrible. The trailer, you know, there are moments in there that seem weird but could work, like the whole thing about the ferret that can't see. Like, okay, that's kind of funny and amusing to see, but other than that, though, it's just slapstick jokes. Not even good slapstick jokes in general. It's just, if those are the real highlights of the movie from the trailer that you need to showcase in there, then you really don't have anything to sell the movie in general. The whole movie is just so bizarrely put together. I didn't even mention Alec Baldwin. You even saw in that trailer there how weird his character is in this movie. Like, that's something that probably would not fly today by any means necessary, but this movie should not be as weird and bizarre as it is, but for a comedy that looks pretty standard, when you delve into the strangeness of this movie, how the actors came together, how the movie just plays out, you really do need to experience this movie for yourself to see the decisions that this movie made, because, my God, this is a bizarre film. I can't even really say it's a bad film or a good film, but it's one of those fascinating failures we get every once in a while. You get something like A Cool World, where this is a movie that should be terrible, but there's just something fascinating about how ridiculous and stupid this whole thing is, that you just have to give it a chance and see. You're probably not going to have any real reaction to it when it's all said and done. You're just going to be like, I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it, but I'm kind of glad I saw it. That's how I feel about Along Came Polly. This is a film that is just so bizarre. It's really one of those movies that you're really going to have a hard time deciding whether you're going to like it or not. And, yeah, I still don't know if I really like it or not, quite honestly. But, so yeah, that's Along Came Polly. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, which is Torque. Just when you thought Biker Boys was bad enough, here's another Fast and Furious clone, and made by the same people who made the Fast and the Furious, and apparently they're self-hating because there's a lot of negativity against the Fast and the Furious in this movie. It's like the producer of this movie hated making the Fast and Furious movies and thought, you know what, I'm going to add my negative opinions on those movies in this. And somehow it makes the movie even worse than it has any right to be, because this is the Fast and the Furious done horribly wrong. You have a biker, played by Martin Henderson from The Ring, and how he discovers some motorcycles filled with crystal meth. He stows them away, But it turns out this villainous gangster, played by Matt Schultz, has plans to recover the drugs that James frames Ford for the murder of Junior, Frederick Starr, the brother of Trey, played by Ice Cube, who heads the Reapers. A notoriously malicious biker gang, Ford goes on the run and attempt to clear his name while the FBI and multiple groups of motorcycle-mounted marauders chase after him. And God, this movie is a mess. I mean, this is a film that's so badly paced. The action in here is not that great. There are scenes in this movie that are so stupid and put together, and you could just tell that this whole movie has stuff in here that would never happen in real life. Like, there's a scene where they go have a motorcycle race in the middle of the desert, and you have all these people who are like Fast and Furious extras out in the desert barbecuing. Like, why would you go all the way out to the desert for that? Like, and who's barbecuing during the daytime in the desert? Like, can you imagine how hot it was that day when they decided to do this? But it gets even stupider from there, because there's bad dialogue in here. The action sequences are so over the top and ridiculous. There's too many TNA moments. Like, there's a scene where a woman is walking around the city, and then these motorcycles go through, and they're apparently so fast that they can blow this woman's sundress all the way up, and she's wearing like skipping lingerie. It's just like, you're a hooker at this point. Like you could pretend like you're doing that because you feel like you should, if you're not a prostitute or anything like that. That woman was going out to do some shady shit. I'm sorry. It's just like this movie is so poorly put together that, like, Biker Boys. But here's the thing with Biker Boys, was just bad for its own reasons. It was a film that was so blandly put together. Obviously was trying to knock out Fast and the Furious, but the beautiful thing about Torque is that it's beautifully horrible. Like, this is the definition of a so bad it's good type of movie. You look at this movie and you're just like, oh my god, what the hell were they thinking when they made this? And, like, you can tell that nobody in this movie gave a crap about what they were trying to do in terms of telling a story. They just wanted you to have a good time for how silly it is. They put it on in January, for God's sake. I mean, it should tell you right there how they feel about this movie. This is a bad film, but it's a so bad it's good type of film. It's the type of film that you look at and you think to yourself, wow, this is the perfect definition of a guilty pleasure film, because it is such a mess on the direction, the writing, the storytelling, the acting, the action sequences, everything, the sense in this movie. It just doesn't work here at all, and I love it for that. I love how stupid this movie is, and I gotta give it credit for being as stupid as it is. What more can I say, man? Torque is one of those guilty pleasure films. It's a terrible film, but I love every single moment of it. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get to some good movies for once. Films that actually are worth it. Such as this first movie we have here, a rare Disney January release. So obviously the movie must be bad, right? Let's see what Teacher's Pet. And nobody went to go see it. I mean, Disney putting out a movie in the month of January. Disney does not usually do that. Disney usually believes in their movies, and the last one that they did that opened in January was That Darn Cat in '97, but also Snow Dogs came out in 2002. But Snow Dogs was more successful. That Darn Cat, not so much. But yeah, remember the original Teacher's Pet animated series? Yeah, you probably didn't. I didn't even remember the series because it never came here it never came here when ABC had One Saturday Morning. We would always get, like, the 2-hour truncated versions that were basically just like Recess, Pepper Ann. I don't think we ever got Doug. I think the Proud Family was on at the time. Like, we didn't get the full ABC slate because the ABC affiliate around here, WJE, trimmed down the Saturday morning lineup back in the 90s, and we didn't get the full Saturday morning era that people got whenever you think about Disney's One Saturday Morning. But yeah, I had no idea this was actually a TV series until when I first saw the trailers for this. And it's funny because this was actually based off of a short from the Kablam series called, I think, Jimmy the Wonder Boy. But this was originally a Kablam short, which was on Nickelodeon, and eventually became something that went to Disney. And apparently it was successful enough to make a movie out of it, because the thing came out 2 years after the show ended. I guess that Toon Disney audience had found its way towards it, and I guess it was popular enough for Disney to say, let's put some money into it and make a movie out of it. I mean, the plot is pretty simple. You have a dog dreaming of becoming a boy one day, so much so that he dresses up like a boy and goes to the same school that his owner and his mother attend. Leonard is the owner, played by Sean Fleming. Spot is played by Nathan Lane. And he's the only one that knows that he's doing this. And the series is essentially the misadventures of those characters going through various adventures. But you have the movie here, and that's basically the continuation of that, and it's serving pretty much as the final episode because, Leonard and his mother are going down to Florida for this finals that his mother's in, but they need to leave Spot behind, and unknowing to Mrs. Helperman, Spot has been masquerading as a boy. Scott had been a star pupil. Spot wants nothing more than to be a real boy, and he sees a way to do it with this mad scientist played by Kelsey Grammer, who appears on this Jerry Springer-esque show, the host played by Jay Thomas, and Crank thinks he can turn animals into humans conveniently. The lab is right down the street where the Helpermans are staying, and so Spot asks Scott and the rest of the family convince Mary Lou to take him along. Spot becomes a man, but discovers it's not everything that he dreamed of after all, and that's the big thing about this movie, because the whole thing is that he wants to be a boy, but unfortunately, because in dog years, he's actually aged more, so he's basically a man, and it's a really damn good movie. Even if you've never seen the television series, you can find a lot to admire about this movie. I mean, this is a pretty damn good movie. There's so much to admire about the film. The animation, I think, gets a gigantic upgrade. The usual TV animation didn't look too bad, but you could tell the animation here is much more smoother, more vibrant, more colorful, has more mobility to it than the TV series did. The music overall is really good as well. There's a ton of catchy songs in this film. The comedy is really solid. The jokes are very good. They do a lot of homages and parodies of classic Disney movies. A good voice cast. Nathan Lane's perfectly cast as Spot. Sean Fleming works as Leonard. Kelsey Grammer's the bad guy. Like I said, Jay Thomas, Jerry Stiller, and David Ogden Stiers. Deborah Jo Rupp, Estelle Harris, Wallace Shawn, Paul Rubens, Megan Mullally. But the best aspect I found about it was the overall story and the element of surprise that it brought to it. The main focus of the show was for Spot to finally become a human boy, and he does, but not in the way you think, and I like it. I like how they explain it. It does kind of go on a little bit, but it does have a nice climax at the end to it that kind of evens it out in the end. So the unfortunate thing is that the film, I could see why the film bombed at the box office, and it failed miserably, bringing back only $6.5 million off of a $10 million budget, and a couple reasons. One, 2004. We talked about it before. 2D animation was pretty much dying out of the box office at the time, and 3D animation was taking over. So Teacher's Pet ended up being one of those box office casualties. And I said before, the series never really gained that much of a following that many of the other Disney animated shows did. Like the Recess movie. Recess was a popular show, and it made sense to make a movie off of that. Doug was a successful show, not just on Disney, but Nickelodeon. It made sense to make a movie off of that. You can make the argument that Teacher's Pet is the first animated movie based off of a property that didn't have a big following to it. Another example of that would be the Shaun the Sheep movies, which are great. Those films are great as well. I think those are much better than this, but lastly, it didn't help that the movie opened up in mid-January, and like I said before, most family films don't do well at all in January, and it felt like Disney was dumping it out because they knew it wasn't going to make any money, and it's a shame because the film really is good, and it certainly kicked the crap out of the movie that Disney was so proud of, Home on the Range, and we'll get to that one later on, because that's the film that literally killed Disney animation for a bit there, but this, I love this movie. It's got the laughs, it's got the great animation, great music, great story. Everything about it just works. It's a film that, even if you've never seen the TV show, you still can find so much to admire about this movie. It's a great film. I can't recommend it enough. Seek this one out if you can find it. It should be on Disney Plus. I think it is, but if you can find a DVD version of it, I'd highly recommend checking it out because it is indeed worth the watch. So that's Teacher's Pet. Let's go ahead and move to last film, which is another underrated animated film that came out in, I guess this is the American release of this, Tokyo Godfathers.
This bundle of joy is a Christmas present sent from God. She's our baby now.
So this is the film that's directed by Satoshi Kon, who gave us Perfect Blue and Paprika. And the story here is that you have three homeless people on Christmas Eve, a middle-aged alcoholic named Jin, a transgender woman named Hannah, and a dependent teenage runaway named Miyoku, who discover an abandoned newborn while searching through the garbage for presents. On the baby is a note asking the finder to take good care of her and a key, leading to a bag with clues to the parents' identities. And so the trio set out to find the parents. Hannah names the baby Kyoko, based off the Japanese translation of Silent Night, literally meaning pure child. And they come across these crazy adventures. They end up encountering a Yakuza boss, and just chaos ensues from there. And this is a really, really damn good movie. I was really taken by this. The first time I heard about it was when the Nostalgia Critic talked about it with one of his underrated Christmas movies, and I'm glad I got to see it because it is definitely really good. And it's a film that, unlike the other films this director has done, it's grounded more in realism, and it basically involves devices that are not straightforward, and it's a twisted, sentimental story, and it's a movie that really works because it's a film that could easily... This is something that could possibly work in live action. Like, I always talk about how animation is kicking the ever-living crap out of live action, but this movie is definitely one that could easily be a live action film, and I think could work very well if you got the right people involved with it, and you didn't change the tone of it. But it is a really heartfelt film. It's nicely animated. You do really get behind these characters, and you want them to find the parents of this kid. And it's a really engaging storyline. It delivers everything you can ask for and then some. It really is an underrated little gem. I was so glad to find it a couple years ago, and I'm glad that I got a chance to see it. I check it out every Christmas, every once in a while. It's a film I really do recommend checking out. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Tokyo Godfathers. Seek it out. You will not be disappointed by it by any means. And so with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. We got 2 movies to look at next time around. Ashton Kutcher and Amy Smart in The Butterfly Effect. And also Josh Duhamel, Kate Bosworth, and Topher Grace in Win a Date with Tad Hamilton. So we'll take a look at those 2 movies next time. But until then, thank you so much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. And I should also say that later tonight on this show, on the Reviewing Network Live channel, there'll be a Wednesday episode looking at my best and worst movies of the year so far. That's going to be posted as soon as I post this up. But go ahead and check that out. I'll leave a link in the corner so you can go check that out. But check that out. I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode of this show. So thanks for watching. And until then, take care.